Welcome to another episode of the magazine. Today we have with us someone who's been in the music industry for over 55 years as a singer, songwriter, and local musician. We want to welcome to our show Gary Brown. Welcome, Gary.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So tell us how you got into music.
Well, it starts probably when I was maybe 7 years old. I had a family that was kind of pre-war, post-war family. So my brother Roy and my sister Nancy were 10 years older than my brother Steve and I. So I was the ring bearer for his wedding, actually.
Okay.
And when they got married, they lived probably a block away from where my family lived. And my sister-in-law had an extensive record collection. So I used to go up there and pretend that I was one of the Everly Brothers or Elvis or Ricky Nelson, all the teen idols that I really loved to hear.
Sure.
And so I would take my tennis racket with me and I would pretend that I was playing guitar and I would sing along to all the records. So that's basically how I got into the music business.
That's great. So what is your background then in music as you got into the music, love for music? What's some of your background?
Yeah, well, what happened was my parents bought me my first guitar, when I was like 12 years old. Mm-hmm. And the strings were like a million miles off the frets. It was really difficult to play, but I persevered and I started learning songs off the record and I kind of taught myself how to play the guitar.
Okay.
And my brother Steve started playing drums, so we kind of played in our living room together. And then by the time he got to high school, I was still in junior high school, he had joined a band with a couple of his friends from high school. And of course, I used to tag along and sing with them, And then we had one gig, and I was to get up and sing, and I was kind of stage fright. And I said, I can't do it. I just can't get up there and sing. So that was kind of the beginning of, me getting up in front of people. I finally got up and I sang a few songs with them. But as far as learning music, I really never learned until later in life where I really needed it to, learn music theory.
So initially self-taught?
Pretty much, yeah.
But you were in a band?
I was in a band, yeah. And then, high school came along, and that's where I really started to play more. I had a band that, I guess you would call it a copy band or whatever, of Three Dog Night. We had three singers, and we had a full band. It was like a 7-piece band that did all three Dog Night songs. So that was in high school, and we played all the local dances. And we weren't in clubs yet, but we had played, the local dances.
So what was that experience like?
It was great because, at that age, all the girls used to come to the dances and, so it was fun meeting new people and, playing all those dances and becoming like a local, at that time, a local star, I guess,
Sure.
in high school, right? Yeah. But, after that, I took music a little more seriously and started playing more guitar and, once I got to college and even like later in high school, like my senior year, I started listening to a lot of James Taylor music, and I became kind of enamored with his style of playing, the finger picking and those bass notes that he had and the kind of like jazz chords that he, used. And it was really how I became to learn how to finger pick by listening to James Taylor. Mm-hmm. And so that was the start of listening to, beyond the pop stuff.
Sure.
Even though he was pop, he always had that jazz influence. And so I kind of liked the jazz. Even though I don't play jazz, I still listen to a lot of jazz.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of that. And doing a lot of solo work. And as I got into college, I was old enough to get out and play in the clubs. And then, everybody had a million bands back then. You could just go through different bands that you had played with, And in college, you needed money, so I ended up joining a wedding band, sort of. But we did a lot of Mills Brothers, so the vocals were very difficult, So then on top of that, you would do, your pop music as well. And then by the time I graduated from college, I think I wanted to play. I just wanted to get out there and play. So I ended up leaving college but not leaving college. I told my parents that I was still in college. To this day, they still think that I was in college. But I ended up traveling on the road with a band. And, we had an agent. We talked about agents before, but I had this agent that was so bad, like you'd go in to get paid and he'd put a gun on the table so that, make sure that there was no funny business. That was kind of an eye-opener.
Sure.
And we played some pretty shady places. And so I decided that I didn't want to do that. And I went back to get my degree, finish up on my degree in college.
So it led to a career.
It led to a career. I ended up teaching for a living. I taught at Holy Family High School. That was really my first teaching experience. I taught there for 5 years.
Okay.
And then I moved on to Old Colony Regional Voc Tech. And then I spent 30 years there.
Oh, wow.
3 years as a teacher. And then I got into the administration of the whole thing. And I became the academic and vocational coordinator, which was different for me because it wasn't just academics. It was also the other house, the other side of the house being, the vocational programs, which I didn't really know a lot about. Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of work to put all that together. And then I spent, I don't know how many years I spent in that position. And then I became what they called the assistant superintendent, okay, which was really the principal. And then finally, the Department of Education did away with the assistant superintendents for Voc Tech, and they called them principals. So I was the principal for 16 years there.
Oh, wow.
At Old Colony. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the kids and the staff that I had. It was a great school. We didn't have a lot of teachers moving out. We didn't have a lot of disputes. I think, we were associated with the Teamsters Union. We weren't associated with the MTA. So it was a little different.
Sure.
And we only had maybe one grievance in 10 years that I was at, 11 years that I was principal or whatever. And then after that, it became the superintendent. And I can still remember my boss coming in after school one day, and he said, I'm leaving. And I said, oh, well, have a good night. Yeah. And he goes, no, I'm leaving. I'm leaving the school system. And I'm, you probably will become the superintendent. And I was like, really? I was a little nervous at that point, but it worked out for me. And I really enjoyed that aspect of the position, working with the 5 towns that we had. The budget was tough to always get past, mm-hmm. But I, in the 7 years that I put in as superintendent, I got my budget passed every year by all 5 towns. So that was wow. pretty decent,
That is. That's a big budget. I know the school budget is a big
budget.
budget.
Yeah, it was a small school. It was like $10 million budget, with maybe 100 staff members. So it was good. And the building was aging, so I did a lot of work with SBA, School Building Authority, sure. to get projects done, a new roof, new rooftop units and heating units and energy management. I think at that point I was nominated for Man of the Year by the Standard Times.
That's great.
Yeah, it was. I don't know if I was deserving that. When I went to the banquet, all these people, like I'd saved people in a fire, and I'm like, here I am. I put an energy system in, but it was, it was nice to be honored like that.
Well, also as an educator, you've touched many lives, so.
Oh, absolutely. I figured it out when the last graduation. I think I figured it out how many thousands of kids that I had over the years. And it was always funny. Sometimes playing in clubs at night, you'd see some of those graduates that had,
sure.
that were old enough to be in the clubs, and they say, "Hey, remember me?" And I go, "No, I remember your face, but I don't remember your name." It's just too many kids after a while, especially when you're not in the classroom anymore.
Right. But even doing your superintendent role, you still stayed in the music industry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think the Standard Times did when I was principal, they did an article on me, school principal by day, musician at night. It's like one of those things. That was fun.
that experience like, playing and seeing some former students come up to you like that?
It depends if they were old enough. I ran into a situation once when I was playing this club, and I'm looking out on the dance floor, and I'm going, that kid's in my class. He's not old enough to drink. So I went up to the bartender, and I said, that kid's not old enough to drink. He shouldn't be in here. And he said, oh, Eric, he comes here all the time. I was like, okay. Not going to win that argument.
No. But it must have been also comforting to see some graduates, that are old enough, obviously, and then they're following you now musically.
Yeah, I still see them. I really kept in touch with the Holy Family kids that I had because it was my first few years of teaching, And so I still, as a matter of fact, I'm going to the class of '84 40th reunion, I think, next week, or the week after. So that'll be interesting. And, a lot of those students really had, they respected what I did, in the classroom as well as musically. So it was nice to still see them,
Mm-hmm.
And they have grandchildren. That's the funniest thing is like, you see these people, that's your grandchild? That's how old I am?
Well, and what about your family? How did your family adjust to you being a musician, being a superintendent? How did your family adjust to all that?
Well, my wife came from a family of musicians. Her mother was a concert pianist, and her brother, I still play with her brother. Sometimes we do solos. I have a band called North Woods that I work with him. And my stepsons are a musician. Adam actually just opened up for Alicia Keys last night.
Wow.
Yeah, so he's on tour. He works with J.P. Sax. He's the drummer for J.P. Sax and guitar player too. He plays a little bit of guitar. So, they're all in the music industry. Matt, who lives in Istanbul, is a journalist, but he's also a very good musician.
Mm-hmm. So they've been a part of the experience.
Absolutely, yeah. As a matter of fact, Adam learned to play drums because we used to practice at my house, and he'd go downstairs and what's he doing down here? He's pounding on the drums, So I had to ask the drummer, you don't mind if he plays the drums? He, no, that's fine. And then I hooked him up with, I was friends with Jackie Santos, and I hooked him up with Jackie and taught him how to play, and then he went to Berklee School of Music.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
And then Matt went to the University of Calgary and Indigenous Studies. So that's probably why he's in Istanbul. He just loves that stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
So what are you currently doing for music?
Currently, I have two bands that I work with, North Woods and Blue Lobster. I've been with Blue Lobster for probably 20 years anyway, and solo work. And whatever comes along, I work with a couple of old friends, jam sessions over at the Bayside in Fairhaven. Okay. And so whatever comes along, I volunteer my services as I work with the BCC Holocaust and Genocide Center, kind of training teachers. And I work for the nonprofit. It's called The Second Half. It's out of Fall River. What they do is they provide coursework for people my age, people that are retired, 60s and 70s. So I teach the history of rock and roll. That's my thing. So I develop my own coursework. So I've done courses, 2 courses on the Beatles, one on Bob Dylan, the actual history of rock and roll. Now I'm doing singer-songwriters. So it's a lot of work, but it's a lot of fun.
Did you do it remotely through the pandemic?
Yes, I did. I'm still doing it remotely. Some people still don't want to come out to, which is good for me because I have my piano here, I have my guitars, everything. It's easier for me, but it would be nice to be, have it right there, live and in person.
Sure. Did the pandemic affect your band work or at all?
Yes. We canceled all our gigs in 2020. And I also did guitar shows. I had been doing guitar shows at UMass Dartmouth, and I had clients from, let's say, Maine to New York City, and in between, everywhere in between. So and I'd have probably 15 to 20 vendors that would come in. So I had to cancel that as well. Then I did some promoting prior to the pandemic. I promoted Mike Stern who is a great fusion jazz guitarist and worked with Miles Davis, and I promoted him at UMass Dartmouth. That was probably one of the best things that I did. It was like kind of nervous to do a big person like that, doing all the backline, and some of the people from my guitar shows helped me with the backline. The backline is having all the amplifiers that you need, the drums, because they just come in and play. You have to provide all of that. So that was good. And then I did a whole show with Berkeley teachers. Jackie Santos and Byron Brown and a number of other Berkeley teachers that came in. And every show that I did was more of a teaching lesson. So when I did the Mike Stern show and the Berkeley teachers, I gave out free tickets to probably, I think it was 75 tickets to local high schools so that students could come for free. So that was a pretty cool thing. Yeah, I enjoyed that. And then I did smaller shows over in Marion, and I had Steve Katz from Blood, Sweat, and Tears. And I became friends with Steve. He did a couple of my guitar shows for me, so we still keep in touch. And when I was doing the singer-songwriter, he did one of my Zoom presentations for me. And so he knows everything about singer-songwriters. And so really good guy, really nice to be in touch with people like that. Him and a person called Vern Miller. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Vern Miller. Vern was the bass player for the Remains, Barry and the Remains, who did the last American tour with the Beatles. So he did one of my classes with me on the Beatles. So we still keep in touch as well. So it's good, yeah.
And now that we're getting back to the community, getting back out there, have you noticed a lot of people really excited to be back out?
Oh, yeah. People are really happy to be out listening to live music again. It really is. Really, it's good. And there are a lot of local places to play around here. And you don't have to go that far. You can step out outside your door, the Mattapoisett Inn, or the Inn at Shipyard Park. And, there's the Walrus down the street. There's the brewery over in Westport. There's the winery over in Dartmouth. There's so many good places to play. So where can someone find you then? At those places? You could find me at those places, the Walrus, the Mattapoisett Inn. I call it the Mattapoisett Inn. It's actually the Shipyard.
Sure.
Yeah. But, all those places they can find me.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And so what does the future look like?
Well, I guess I'll keep playing until I can't play anymore.
Sure.
It's tough sometimes now, getting older, your hands start getting a little arthritis in them, and it's tough to play the way you used to play. But I still enjoy it when I don't enjoy it anymore. And I'll just keep on doing things for the communities.
And so what advice, you're an educator, you're a musician, someone who wants to get into the music industry, what advice would you give them?
It's tough. It depends on what you want to do. I mean, there are so many different aspects to the music industry. I watched my stepson go through it, trying to get to that level that he can be comfortable with, And the key is to make sure that you have people around you and learn and experience other people that are going through similar things. Berklee School of Music has these different events for Berklee students, in California, in New York City, in Europe, so in Nashville. So those people are always connected. And that helped him a lot, make those connections to people that were doing similar things that he was doing. And that's where he met J.P. Sachs before he became a singer-songwriter. And that's, you can see the J.P. Sachs $1 million seller here. If the world was ending, you'd come over, right? But you got to meet those kind of people and be in the know. And there's so many things, the streaming things that, the money isn't there like it used to be, like the record companies, the streaming, you're not making a lot of money on streaming, but it's the royalties that you get from writing that may help you to make ends meet. And that's where it all comes from, and then the touring, if you can get it.
Mm-hmm. And you've never lost your passion for music?
No, not at all. No, my whole family, My great uncle worked at the conservatory, New England Conservatory. My uncle Donald was a great jazz musician in New Bedford area. So it kind of runs in the family. When we were younger, we used to go to Mattapoisett, take the bus to Mattapoisett, and have family outings over there, and everybody was singing and playing. So, it grew up with me, or I grew up with it.
Sure, and got stronger through the years.
It got stronger through the years.
So I want to thank you for taking the time out of your schedule here to talk about your passion for music and encourage other people in the music industry. And
education.
And education, exactly.
I'd be nowhere without it. That's
excellent.
For sure.
Yeah. Any final thoughts?
No, not at all. I've been very fortunate to meet a lot of good people through music and through education. So I encourage everybody to get a decent education and play an instrument.
Well, thank you for your contribution to our community and for more to come.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you.